approve the reimbursement amounts for the Lakestone Development Reimbursement Agreement.
And that's $5,000?
That's kind of what Caitlin just, put in there. And it depends on what we decide is reasonable for the subdivision that we're dealing with. So we kind of need to.
And then any other, they reach the $5,000 and we assess some more.
Right, and if you read that agreement, it calls for them to keep whatever we decide as a deposit. They have to maintain that. We bill them monthly for any costs that come in during the month, and they have to pay it. The deposit's sitting there because if they don't pay as billed, we're not going to eat it.
So are we anticipating that the legal costs that we were just talking about would then be passed on to them?
Yes. That's what I was going to bring up, Pat. Definitely. Yeah. So I guess, when Pat, you jump in here too, that Jesse, we need to get this reimbursement letter out to them, and we can wait, or I guess just tell them that we can't move forward without contacting our legal counsel, and that will be a cost that they will need to pay.
Yep, I will definitely reach out to them and let them know that and get the reimbursement agreement over to them.
Okay, so the amounts, what are your feelings? It can be 5,000 or any amount over or above that. And then what portion of that do we want them to deposit, maintain a deposit for? Half of it. I guess I would say, Jesse, you correct me if I'm wrong, but at this point in time, we have incurred some costs. I believe they're minimal. One would be that will serve letter that Caitlin did, but that should be theirs, Jesse, because that was specific to them. That wasn't our run-of-the-mill letter. I think Kyle, the last time I talked to him, he indicated he only had a few hours. So at this point in time, unless you have anything, Jesse, that's been billed specifically to this, I don't think we have a large amount right now that would be reimbursable.
I don't believe so either. And yeah, Kyle said he had 2.5 hours.
Okay, I knew it wasn't much. And I would imagine Caitlin's wouldn't be over that either. I don't know. I'm just going to throw this out here. I think $5,000 is a respectable amount. Does anybody, Pat, what do you think?
Oh, I mean, you've got two numbers in here. You've got an estimate, and then you've got the deposit amount. And the estimate's $5,000 in this draft, and the deposit amount's $2,500.
Right. We have to deal with both of those. We have to determine them. So we can say $5,000 is our estimate of cost. So do we want to have them deposit the full amount, or will we let them deposit? In this case, the example was $2,500. And then once that's used up, if it were to be used up, they have to deposit more money. But the idea of the reimbursement agreement is that we have that deposit to cover any unpaid reimbursable amounts, and that we bill them monthly and we still maintain whatever dollars are on deposit. That's the way the agreement's written. So we need to, go ahead, Pat.
I mean, I don't understand the actual status of this development, but is the recital in this agreement correct for what is happening? It says the applicant is requesting approval of a subdivision for property within the district.
Mm-hmm.
Is that their actual request right now?
Yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Okay.
They want to get a will serve letter from us that we will service both water and sewer for this subdivision.
So, I mean, to me, that applicant is requesting approval of a subdivision doesn't tell me that. But if it does everybody else, then that's fine. My only other question is, and I'm just looking at this with this in mind right now, I don't know that it covers costs that we've already incurred.
We talked with Gary when he was at the meeting. That we've actually had this conversation with them, Pat, from the very beginning, and Jesse can jump in here too, that they have to pay all of our costs. And he was very agreeable last time. He understood, and I actually said at the last meeting, we've talked about this every time we've talked with them, and now we're not going to do anything more until this happens. And he was very...
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Blaine, I don't have a problem with that, but I think it needs to be in the agreement. I don't think we can have a written agreement that everybody signs, and then we have oral agreements that are different than our written agreement. So I think somewhere in this agreement it should specify that it will cover costs incurred prior to execution of the agreement in connection with the application. I mean, we get ourselves in big trouble if we sign something and then Pauline tells them something and Bob tells them something and they think all of this oral conversations are binding. I mean, certainly talk to...
Did you read section D?
So what page would that be?
On the very front.
I did. I just like to see it cover all costs, whether incurred prior to execution of the agreement or after. I'd just like to make it very clear. And that shouldn't be hard for Fonda to... Obviously, that's a board decision.
No, it's been a long time since I read this too. But I know that it's very inclusive, but I don't have a problem with having Fonda change this and make that change that this, it includes, it does say in a couple places here that they pay for everything, and we will add prior and subsequent to the execution of this agreement. We lost them, don't we?
No, I was just doing, no, we didn't. I was just looking for that construction improvement agreement online. They're still there.
Pat?
Yes?
Yeah, okay. So I will probably in section D or E, or the appropriate section here, we will have Fonda add all costs prior to or subsequent to the execution of the agreement.
Thank you. Yeah, I would suggest she put it not in the recitals, but in the part where they agree to pay certain costs.
Okay.
I'm sure she'll do.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll know where to put it. Okay.
Would you put including in a new regulation cost and also new facility plan cost?
No,
Just to clarify everything.
Yeah, no, it's all inclusive. It does say all costs. The only thing, and Pat had a good point, it was our fault, we didn't get this. We should have just not gone, done anything until we had this, the CIA executed, but we didn't do that, so now we have to play catch up.
Does anybody have any idea? He has an engineer himself.
Gordon Dobler, yeah.
And does anybody have any idea to the extent that this engineer has talked to DEQ?
Don't know.
I know, the only thing I can say is if you look at that chain of emails, Gordon Dobler was contacting Chris at the same time. He was on that chain. He received the email from Chris, and I don't believe that at that time they had met, but he was trying to set up a meeting with them. And that's all I know.
So he has, he's well aware of the situation, or he should be.
Yes, he was copied on that. Yeah, right. So Jesse, if you, before you get the agreement out, if you will contact Fonda and get that change made.
Yep, I will definitely do that.
Okay. So we're back to the amounts. $5,000, and do we want them to deposit half of it, or we want them to deposit all of it?
Is 5,000 enough?
Yeah.
All of it. Well, the agreement does say that, it's only our estimate, and it can be over, it can be under, but it doesn't change the fact that it's their responsibility to pay everything. So.
So yeah, the amount is, yeah, I would say $5,000 and go from there. I mean, it's a starting point.
Yeah.
All of it.
Sean says all of it.
So you want the deposit to be all of it, Sean?
I would say so, yes. Just
Yeah.
Yes, I would.
to keep us from getting into a bind.
Okay, great.
And then there are other triggers if it goes above that at some point that do we just bill them, or do we say you're at your 5,000, we need more, or how do we handle that?
We bill them, I mean, just like
Yeah,
like our contractor bills us.
Yeah, we bill them monthly, and I think what we would do is advise them, of course, that we've determined that it's gonna be more, but yes, they're required to pay us.
Now, there was language in here stating that this agreement is all-encompassing, and there can be, there's a word for it, the mini agreements that are attached to this. They will become part of this whole, and if we had to open up to drill down further with the amounts and such, we could do that with another agreement at a later time. Not that we want to make things more complicated.
Yeah, in section D on the screen, you can see that you already went on that toward the end. It says covers all costs.
It says said estimate is not binding on the district as the actual cost may exceed or be less than estimated. The selection of consultants and the method of contracting and administering the consultant shall be at the district's sole discretion.
So, but the agreement also provides that they maintain that amount of a deposit the whole time.
Absolutely. We will, if you read that, Pat, we keep that money,
Right.
and we're not going to be charging our cost to that. Jesse's going to bill them monthly, and they are required to pay us all costs on a monthly basis. The only time that we would have to use this is if they didn't pay us our invoiced amount, and then we would have this to charge it against. And if that ever happened, then they have to bring the deposit back up to the amount.
Does that cancel the agreement at that point if they don't? What's the?
No, they're just required to bring it back up, to this case, to 5,000, because we're gonna require $5,000 deposit, yeah.
Okay,
So if, you wanna, are we ready to make, a motion for the amounts and how we're going to proceed, or do we have further comments?
I would make the motion that we have a $5,000 deposit.
Okay, if we would, need a motion, to, send the reimbursement agreement to Lakestone subdivision, asking for, an estimate of $5,000 for, cost involved with the application, and that we require the total $5,000 be deposited in accordance with the terms of the agreement. And then we also need to add to that the officers are authorized to execute the agreement according to those terms.
Yes, I would so move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Pat, are you there?
Sorry, you just maybe didn't hear me.
Pardon?
I voted aye. You maybe just.
All right, we weren't sure. Thank you.